Welcome to another edition of the Royal Alliance UK podcast, episode 310. Rome wasn't built in a day. My name is Matthew Turner, alongside Ashley Soden, Anthony Fitzpatrick to join shortly, and joined by special guest, returning best guest ever, Ryan Dangle from Bear Down Chicago podcast. How you doing, Ryan?
Again, I have to apologize. I'm in my special studio, but it's been a crazy thing before the holidays. Thank you so much for having me on. I absolutely love this connection that we've got going on, and hopefully we'll have you guys on our podcast real soon.
Look forward to doing that. Love you guys all over there. It's the strongest connection I think we've made in all of our time doing this in the last 4 years, and it's just great to have the back and forth that we have. It's all good banter, and we just get along like house of fire. So let's get into this. We're going to do our normal show after we talk to Ryan because our time with him is limited. So without further ado, let's just get into the Bears, and let's maybe start from the beginning. You guys had the number one overall pick in Caleb Williams, and expectations were sky high. Really, you kind of built this thing where you've got all of these receivers, you've kind of invested a little bit on the offensive line in several spots. I mean, but you have. May not be going perfectly on that point. And then you obviously have traded for Montez Sweat, and you've invested in that defense. It's fair to say, I think, that a lot of Bears fans were kind of hoping for above 500 at the absolute worst this season. How do you think it's gone so far in the projects? Because I do think the record is slightly unfair on where you've been as a team so far, maybe?
The problem is that the team is more talented than the record would show, and it is I think falls solely on, and I hate to say falls solely on, but it's really Matt Eberflus. He's an absolutely dreadful head coach. He's in way over his skis, just absolutely can't do it. And so yeah, I think you're right. I think with Caleb, a lot of Bears fans were saying the same thing. Let's preach patience because he is a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes. And that, I think, exactly as you said, right, 9-8 was kind of like, hey, I think that's doable. Maybe 10-7 at best. There were some Bears fans that were saying way above that, but I don't think anybody was thinking about, the Bears might be on a 5, 6, 7 game losing streak. I didn't think that was really a possibility, but alas, here we are.
So just to put into context the season that you've had, so you're 4-7 now. Pro Football Reference says your expected win total based on how you've played is 5.6 wins, so well above the 4 that you actually have, which would indicate that you are at least potentially pretty unlucky so far this season, starting off with a win against Tennessee, losses at Houston and at Indianapolis, then a few straight wins versus the Rams, versus Carolina, versus Jacksonville, but then 5 straight losses at Washington, at Arizona, versus New England, versus Green Bay, versus the Minnesota Vikings in overtime recently. I mean, at 4-2, I think expectations were kind of getting away from you guys even as well. Like, kind of, we can really push on from here. It felt like that was very much the thinking, even though perhaps Caleb, even at 4-2, wasn't firing on all cylinders. In the losses, there were 2 picks in each of those games. And I think even as far back as in the middle of this slide, 3-4 weeks ago, people were saying, maybe you need to kind of not bench him to give him time, but the Arizona game, he was 50-odd% completion, New England 50-odd% completion against 2 fairly average defenses. But then the last 2 weeks are his 2 best games as a pro back to back, and he's been building on something. And that's all come maybe from Shane Waldron being fired. I don't know. But let's stick on Caleb. He's had a kind of up and down start.
Well, and I think you just hit the nail on the head. And it comes back to my idea that Matt Eberflus didn't want to hire a big personality. He didn't want to hire someone that was gunning for his job, which is why he hired probably the worst possible situation in Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron, there was no rhythm, there was no rhyme, cohesion, there was no structure. And Caleb really strives in structure. And so Thomas Brown coming in has been just an absolute breath of fresh air. I don't know if you guys remember watching the Bears give the football to a backup center on the goal line as a fullback, and every Bears fan is going, what is this? Oh. Whereas Thomas Brown goes, hey, you've got a really good running back in Roschon Johnson that is very good at the line. And now all of a sudden you see, well, he's got a bunch of touchdowns. It just, he's doing the simple things so incredibly well, and Caleb seems to be just gelling with him so well. I think you got to see a little bit of that specialness in the Vikings game. He can make the plays. The Bears are not 4-7 because of Caleb. Yeah, he started off a little bit rough, like any rookie quarterback would, but he's done enough. And honestly, he hasn't thrown interceptions. He hasn't been asked to put the ball in harm's way. But I think Thomas Brown is letting his skill set show in a way that we haven't seen with Shane Waldron. And just one really quick thing is he's giving Caleb the opportunity to run. Caleb is not the athlete that Justin Fields was. He's not. But he has this ability to find the sticks. He needs 7 yards. He's going to get you 7.1 yards. Do you know what I mean? Just enough to get there. But he's looking down the field to throw the ball, and that's what has Bears fans so excited about his potential down the road.
Ash, do you have any thoughts on the overall Bears?
Yeah, so it's kind of building on what you just said, especially with Thomas Brown. Obviously, people might remember him as number one being involved in the Rams a couple of years ago. Just as Goff's leaving, he comes in as the running backs coach, eventually goes up, and then last year gets hired as the Panthers OC with Bryce Young. Had a few struggles there, obviously. Then to come to you guys, do you think Brown's kind of took last year as a learning experience, what happened in Carolina, took it under his belt, and now in a new situation that's kind of similar, has actually learned from those mistakes and is now building on it, as you say, simplifying the offense, giving the ball to the right people, letting Caleb use his skill set rather than railroading into something that doesn't work?
Ash, that's spot on, 100%. And I think also too, I mean, I feel bad for him just as a human being, going from a dysfunctional organization in the Carolina Panthers to a dysfunctional organization with the Chicago Bears. And I think his personality wise, I highly doubt you guys got to see his interview today. He has it. He pulls you in. He tells you who he is. And, I think something that has made Dan Campbell so great is hiring coaches that have played in the NFL, that speak the language that players want to hear. Thomas Brown is that guy. And he's like I said, simple things well. And guys, I'll say this, I mean this sincerely. Please do not mess this up for us. Please win big on Thursday, because there is a thought, because the Bears have never fired a head coach in midseason, but there's this kind of feeling amongst Bears fans that there's never been an assistant coach like Thomas Brown in a position with great influence that you think, ooh, there's some chemistry between him and the quarterback. Maybe we don't want to lose this guy. And you maybe think about firing Matt Eberflus after you guys just please annihilate us. Please do it. And if Caleb continues to look good with Thomas Brown, maybe you hand him the reins as a head coach for a couple games towards the end of the season. You say, maybe, just maybe, this could be something a little bit different. The Bears finally zig when they've always zagged.
It kind of feels like when the Lions fired Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
We've got to that point where it's like, I know that the Bears don't fire head coaches in season, but at this point, you need to cut the limb off at the knee to save the leg. Like, it's a horrible way to put it, but like, the gangrene has set in, and you really don't want to ruin Caleb anymore. And Brendan's in the chat just saying it's worth mentioning that both starting tackles have come back in the last 2 weeks as well, which has coincided with the change in OC. It's a very fair point, but I think there was a fair argument to be made that what was happening was actively harming Caleb's development. And since then, that hasn't been the case. So that's something, I think. But let's talk about more of the overall team, because the vibe has not been great. However, the defense really has been pretty damn good, and I think maybe over expectation in some facets of it. So I think the linebacking core is, okay, you're not agreeing, but I'm going to go with what I'm saying. So I think the linebacking core has been pretty good. I think that Jalen Johnson has taken a big step back. I think Tyreek Stevenson has taken a big step back as well, and maybe that's where you kind of regressed in the corner area. But up front, especially, I think DeMarcus Walker has taken, a nice little jump for him, as someone who I thought was maybe slightly above replacement level edge, and now is being very productive. Sweat's obviously been fantastic. And then Gervin Dexter has gone from I mean, I really wasn't a fan of his in the process. And then it's like, okay, maybe there's something there. And now I think he's met very much on the sort of a Liam McNeil road of like, he can take the next step here and be that disruptive interior guy. I mean, he's obviously a bit of a different player to Aleem in that he's several inches taller and absolutely massive, but he's still got that sort of interior pressure, which I didn't think he was capable of. I mean, Florida?
Yep.
He wasn't that sort of interior pressure guy.
No.
And he's kind of developed a new skill here, and that's a big win for you guys.
His pad level was always too high, and that's something that they've worked really, really hard on him. He worked really hard this offseason. Andrew Billings going down has essentially forced him into that position, and I think he's shined very well. Matt, I think, again, I need to say this, and it's really important. You guys know more about the Bears often than many Bears fans, and I need to say that. But I think the problem that I have with what you're saying is that Matt Eberflus hasn't run a good defense, and they've regressed this season. And most importantly, when we needed them to do well, they haven't performed. When you talk about Tyreek Stevenson, the idiocy of yelling at fans in Washington when there's still play to be had, I think that really that destroyed his confidence. And then you have Terrell Smith, who's sitting behind him, who's actually a pretty good player, but even he didn't have a great game. All hands to Minnesota Vikings. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Sam Darnold played a good game. I'm still having a hard time getting those words out of my mouth. But I think the problem is we're seeing regression all across the board. What I said on the Bear Down Chicago podcast a couple of weeks ago was that Matt Eberflus lost this team when the Fail Mary happened. Jaden Daniels throws that pass, gets caught in the end zone for a touchdown, and he doesn't come out and take full accountability. And I think to that, you saw a lack of confidence in some of these defensive players. He is the type of coach that plays not to lose, and therefore we've had just 3 to 4 gut-wrenching losses when the defense had the opportunity to be the hero, and that wasn't the case. And so I just think we're all ready for a turning of the page.
To kind of bring this all to a close, because we've got maybe 5 more minutes to kind of talk a little bit more, and then about the game, perhaps. Where is this going? So, this year, obviously, Eberflus is gone, and I think this is a foregone conclusion now. There's no salvaging this season, I do not think. You're going to have to play... Are you playing 4 division games in the next 6? We are. I think a lot of the division is. That's going to be tough, given where the rest of the division is. So, sub 500 season, good draft pick coming up, potentially. Not many draft picks, though. Has this season dampened the momentum that you guys had from a realistic perspective? Now we know what we know about the Bears and where they are and what they've traded away to get where they are. Is there still positive momentum going to next year? Caleb's going to go into year 2. I would say Swift hasn't been the disaster I thought he would be, even if he hasn't been the success that other people thought he might be. I think the O-line is better than people give it credit for. In terms of what Brendan said about 2 of the tackles coming back, and it's a big difference, there are some gaps to fill. That's what the draft and free agency is for. So with the defense, and we know that, especially DBs kind of go through year to year, big changes, they regress, they come back. That could very much fix itself next year, especially with a good DC. And then a few holes on the offensive line, some good GM work perhaps, and this can still be an optimistic year 2. Well, year 1 of the new regime.
Yeah. There is some talent on this team. There's no doubt about it. And what I would also say is about DeAndre Swift, minus the first couple of games, and then the Vikings that's the best run defense in the entire league. He still got 60 all-purpose yards, didn't blow anybody away. But other than that, he's been spectacular. Truly, if you look at some of the stats, he has been spectacular. Matt, I know how he was for you guys, but I'm honestly thinking about this. You got David Montgomery. You got a David Montgomery that we didn't get, and we got a DeAndre Swift that you didn't get. And I am elated that it has worked out for both teams. I mean that sincerely. He has been stellar for the Bears over the last couple of weeks, minus against the Vikings. Go back and look. He's made some dynamic plays. He's been awesome. I think the optimism rolls singularly around Caleb and maybe a little bit of Caleb and Roman Dunze, that they seem to be building a chemistry that is really special. They're going to be together for a while. The problem is, and you guys fully understand this as Lions fans, is that nobody trusts this organization to make the right decision. Bears continually bring in the right coaches for interviews and then hire the wrong guy. And so the question is, do we trust this organization to put in the pieces around Caleb, around Rome, DeAndre, around some of these very talented defensive players? And the answer is not really right now. I think history is not on our side. But the thing that has all Bears fans talking is Caleb Williams may be special. And he's a rookie. He's going to make bad decisions, holding onto the ball in overtime and taking just a brutal sack. Just brutal. But I really mean this. I think he will learn and he will grow from it. If you watch, the fourth quarter, he gets better, and he makes plays. The Bears need him to make a couple special plays, and he will do it in a way that we've never seen. Justin Fields, and I don't want to knock Justin Fields. He's a good guy. He can make plays that make you go, wow. But when the game was on the line, never did it. Caleb is special. So, is it going to be a quarterback that's good with a dysfunctional organization, or maybe somehow they finally make the right choice? Man, I don't know. I don't know.
It's just so special watching him throw, especially the seams. Just throwing the seam ball, he's absolutely fantastic at. But I think because he's got maybe the best wrist snap in the league, just when you watch him throw and he comes through and snaps that wrist, it's fantastic. So he gets so much zip on it without really having to put in too much effort. Ash, if you got one question, very briefly do that, and then Ryan just to throw to you for some thoughts.
I got a couple questions. Anything else? I love you guys. I love what you're doing, and my wife will forgive me. It's okay.
It's good. I've got nothing.
Okay, fair. Right. So right. How's that happened? Anyway, let's get on to this game in particular. I know that you are, and I'm sure the Lions fans listening to this are slightly surprised, praying for a Lions victory here. But how do you think the game's going to go? Because the signs have been very promising for the Bears, and the Lions are coming into this game really banged up. I mean, left tackle isn't going to go. Punt returner, wide receiver 4 isn't going to go. Amon-Ra's banged up, but looking like he will go. Montgomery banged up, looked like he will go as well. But there's a lot going on. I mean, the Lions are missing 5 of their starters on the front, on the defense. We're still playing very, very well. But I think there's reason for optimism if you want the Bears to win, that they're going to have a shot, especially given, and I'm not one for saying look at the past on this day, but the Lions haven't won on Thanksgiving for 8 seasons. So
we're all kind of hoping that history changes itself because of that. But I will say this: I do expect Caleb to surprise Lions fans a little bit, to put up a few points. The Bears are an opportunistic defense. They may get a turnover or 2. It's entirely possible. But if the game is close at the end, just know that you're going to win it in stunning fashion that will have all of you excited and all Bears fans crying, because that's just the way that this season has gone. I get the sense that maybe third quarter it's a close game, and then fourth quarter that you guys you pull away and show, and I mean this, that you may be the most balanced team in the entire NFL. I mean, I know your record is fantastic, but I just think you're so good across the board. Your run game, your pass game, just, Ben Johnson, just hats off to that dude. One, for sticking with the Lions and not going to one of these coaching opening positions. I think that, seriously, I think that speaks volumes about what you guys are building there. And 2, you can hit people any way that you want to. I think you're going to do it in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be a closer game for part of it, but man, please win this thing. Please win this thing and win in convincing fashion so that the Bears will do something they've never done before and fire a coach in midseason.
It would be an historic day, whatever happens. Briefly about the podcast, how's it going?
It's going great. It's tough, as you guys know, to talk about teams that continue to have heartbreaking losses. You you want to be excited about something. So this last podcast that we just did, the Bear Down Chicago podcast, we tried to be optimistic and have fun, but it's not always easy to do, as you guys know historically. But now it's so much fun for you to be on the other side of it and to be such a good football team. And I'm gonna get a lot of shit from Bears fans for saying this. If y'all win it, I'm gonna be genuinely excited for you guys. And now I've just lost like 5 followers on Twitter, I'm sure, just right now.
It's one of those things. I think you have to go through the shit periods in order to feel like you earn the good ones. I feel like for 15 years, being a Patriots fan was just so dull. You know, like you get to the end of the Brady regime and you're like, I wonder what it's like to lose, and then suddenly they're there, and that must suck. But, you know, at this point, I kind of feel like we deserve this just a little bit, so long may that continue.
Without question.
Ryan, thank you so much for coming back on. Potentially, I don't know if you're going to do a recap show, but let us know if you are. Be happy to lend our services. I don't know.
Thank you guys very, very much. Like I said, I love what you guys are doing, especially being across the pond. You're doing a phenomenal job. You guys know your football, and it's always a pleasure to sit and chat with you guys. Thank you so much. And I know it's not your holiday, but happy Thanksgiving to you guys too. Hopefully you can celebrate a bountiful win.
You have a great family Thanksgiving.
Take care, guys.
We'll see you soon.
Cheers. Yep. See ya. Bye-bye.
All right. Amazing guest. I'm sure you all agree. So happy that he could make it on, even for a brief time. Always worth it for the Bears. It's a privilege to play them twice a season just to talk to Ryan and the gang. Brendan, as I was mentioning, was in the chat, who works at Bears Wires and a co-host of the Bear Down Chicago podcast as well. And Jack is a member of their team as well, who's fantastic, Jack Wright. So shout out to those boys who are doing great work. Right, Ash, should we do the show?
Yep.
All right. If you enjoyed what you were listening to there, then you need to join our Discord channel. The link is going in the live chat right now on the audio pod. It is in the description already. Come say hi to the gang for all week long. And I mean, in the run-up to the draft after the Super Bowl, come what may, the content's going to be off the hook. And basically because Ant and Ryan have been grinding for the last, several years now, but they know their stuff to the point where they predicted pretty accurately, Ash, correct me if I'm wrong, who the new offensive coordinator of FSU is going to be, potentially.
Yes.
You know, like, they're in the depths of it.
Yeah, they really are. Like, congrats to them. Like, I was listening to the podcast earlier, and they mentioned, we've been linked with him a lot, but yeah, we've got sources that say it's looking very likely that Marion's going to be the new OC. And I was like, for God's sake, we have to give my props to Anton right here, aren't I? We have to tell them that they've got it right. And then I found out all the connections, like, oh God, they really know. So like all these connections. But yeah, they know the stuff they predicted. I remember way back, then we go into day 3, we needed linebacker, and literally said, watch out for Malcolm Rodriguez. Lo and behold, who do we take? James Mitchell even. I know I also jumped on that bandwagon, but they predicted him. They know what they're doing over there, even though it pains me sometimes to listen to it because I'm getting ripped. Like, I bet they both had a good laugh, the facts, with what I put in for the FSU Florida pick watch this week. But, listen to them. Even if they're harsh at times to me, I deserve it. It is what it is.
You can listen to that college football podcast. It happened earlier on today. So if you're listening to this show on the live shows, go back and watch that, doing some great stuff. Next week is rivalry week, then you've got championship weekend, then we're into the bowl games, and then that's it for college football for the rest of the season. Of course, we've got the 12-team playoff for the college football playoffs. We've also got FCS playoffs coming up as well, which Ryan absolutely loves. So lots of stuff going on. It's the business end of the season for college football. Please do like this episode, sub to the podcast. You guys know what to do with that. I won't bore you with it. Lions news, and the shocking news, I say shocking in inverted commas because it was kind of tipped yesterday, but before he tweeted about the fact that it may be his final day as a Lion, I think it would have come as a surprise. James Houston has been waived in the last 90 minutes or so by the Detroit Lions, and Ash, it felt like it was heading divorce for a long time. He made the roster and then, didn't do fantastically. We got some injuries. He then didn't really come back into the lineup even then. And then he started to play a little bit better before last week basically being shut out of the game entirely. And that was that. I mean, it kind of feels like maybe something happened last week, which meant that they basically gave him no snaps, and it was the final straw for him. I hate to speculate any further. It's sad because we've not really, quote unquote, given up on any of our draft picks in this regime, particularly. This feels like a real loss of a player who is supremely talented in maybe for the Lions all the wrong ways.
Yeah, it's that last bit, I think, because he definitely has he definitely had the pass rushing chops. We all saw that in his rookie season, where that second half of that season, he was just absolutely immense. This 8 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, looking absolutely great. Then during that off season, I know it caused a bit of contention between me, you, and because we were discussing it, but all kind of in different areas of where we're thinking with this. They asked him to do a bit more. They asked him to basically play that Sam linebacker role, and it just wasn't for him. It was predictable because that's what he used to be at Florida. He used to be an off-ball linebacker, then went to Jacksonville State under Dion, and they told, nope, you're just going to be a pass rusher, and that worked for him. But where he is in the NFL right now, to be that role player, he had to wear multiple hats, and unfortunately, for the regime needing him to do that, he just couldn't. The run defense, while it did improve this preseason, it still wasn't fully there. The coverage wasn't there. And because of the ankle injury that he unfortunately suffered last year on a special teams snap, he didn't have the full pass rushing arsenal anymore. And so, unfortunately, it's come to an end. It is a bit shocking because, as you say, the last couple of weeks he was getting snaps and he was looking better to a point where AQ was being the healthy scratch rather than him. But yeah, just seems that it's come to an end. It obviously, we don't want to speculate anything might happen behind the scenes. Obviously, Dan was very magnanimous about it when he was asked about it in the press conference soon after the news came out, and he was like, it just didn't work out. We wish him all the best. Hopefully a fresh start will do well for him, because a team probably will pick him up and try and get that sort of rookie season back out of him. Will they be able to? I'm not going to speculate. I've said my thoughts on that kind of thing early season when we're having a debate, but hopefully he does get that fresh start and he keeps in the NFL, because it'll be a very rough break for someone who has grinded a lot from basically being cast out of Florida, going to HBCU, getting his way into the NFL as one of the few rare picks from that kind of college, unfortunately. So this happening, he deserves to stick on the roster somewhere, and I hope he does.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. Obviously, he's subject to waivers under the new rules. I think he still would be, even if he was on his rookie deal anyway. Because he's a third-year player, if I'm right?
I think because he didn't... It might be, but because he didn't make the initial 53...
Then he was under the ERFA, but that, I think, would still be subject to waivers, I think, because until you were a vested vet, you'd still have been subject to waivers. Anyway, the waiver process is not going to help him, because I think his natural role is probably a 3-4 outside linebacker. But given that he is earning about $1 million a year, he's about minimum salary. In fact, I think he is on the minimum salary. So there's literally no downside to someone putting in a claim for him. It doesn't affect waiver priority. And if he goes unclaimed through waivers, you're going to sign him to a deal which is exactly the same as this, unless he goes on a practice squad. I think given his sacks in the past, someone's going to take a flyer on what he can do. The problem with someone putting in a claim for him is he doesn't get to choose. And the majority of teams don't run 3-4 as their base, and the majority of teams who play 3-4 as their base still live in nickel 60% of the time, which tends to have 4 down linemen. So even in the best case scenario, as that sort of light pass rusher that you can just send off the edge, which in a 3-4 outside linebacker role, you can do more often than as a 4-3 defensive end. There doesn't seem to be many teams that are going to be running that often enough for him to succeed in the NFL easily. I do think it's a tough road for James, but he's got the right attitude. Like, he wouldn't have survived on this roster, and you know what Dan Campbell was like about attitude. If he didn't have the right attitude, he would have been gone long before. So I believe in him as a person. The player, the physicality, his physical makeup is going to be maybe the thing which holds him back. I don't know, but maybe a little bit more time and he'll get there. But if he goes to the wrong place, we're going to see exactly the same stuff, and that's what waivers may do to him.
Yeah, so there is a certain team that I have earmarked in inverted commas for him that will, number one, probably use him correctly, and number two, have a need there. And number three also gives him potentially a chance for revenge against us because it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
But their waiver priority is so low, surely they won't get a chance at him.
Potentially, but I don't know. If that's the kind of perfect place for him, inverted commas, I think if someone's going to put in a claim, because they have the need, obviously Brandon Graham, Forge had his injury this past week.
Well, they've just claimed Charles Harris as well.
Yeah, but in this situation, it's kind of like what we're potentially doing with corner, what the Commanders are doing with corner right now, where if he makes it through waivers, they'll work him out, and then they've got him there in case Charles Harris doesn't work out, because, again, that's someone that we've had that experience with. Charles Harris looked great here, but then kind of fell off.
Yeah.
If he gets a chance to go there, I think he'd do really well, even though they had Julian Quara and he didn't do anything there. So maybe
it feels like a team fundamentally sound enough to be able to live with the fact that he's not great against the run, because they're so good everywhere else and they're good behind it as well. So
exactly, that's my thinking. Rather than the Giants who just put Elisa Jalari on IR and needed 3-4 outside linebacker. That's a team that would absolutely ruin him, unfortunately.
And it's the sort of team that would claim him because they're so high in the priorities, and why not give it a shot? The Giants is exactly where I thought he'd end up. So well done for picking that out, because now I don't have to. Let's move on to what this actually means for the Lions, because he's gone and it's kind of done now. The question is, why now? And I maybe alluded to the fact that something happened last week. I don't think that's the driving force behind this. What appears to be the driving force behind this, to me, is what Kindle Vildor did on Sunday. Now, we both spoke in the review show about the fact that we didn't think he played as badly as people think. I think we both acknowledged that he was picked on and that he wasn't fantastic and that there was a big drop-off between him and Arnold. Now, Arnold was back. Carlton Davis is probably not for this game. We'll get into that more in a minute. But there have been rumours that the Lions are in the market for a corner. And if they want to bring someone on, someone else has to go. So, the fact that Houston wasn't playing very much and then didn't have very much last week, he seems to be the natural 53rd man, now 54th, if the Lions do sign a guy. The two names which come up to me, we've seen rumoured, we've discussed it on the Discord channel. Steven Nelson, who's primarily a slot player, maybe could play outside. You did talk about that in the Discord. He's obviously a name who has played some exceptional football over the years, but at the moment is without a team as a free agent.
Yeah.
Street free agent. The other player that indicated that things were going to look up for him in the last 2.5 hours, which seems very coincidental given the timing of James Houston leaving, is our very own previous cornerback, Jerry Jacobs. Jerry Jacobs has indicated that he has waited enough to have something good happen to him in the last couple of hours. I wonder if a return is coming or Steven Nelson is coming. I don't know. Both seem for me equally plausible. Don't know what you think.
Yeah, both definitely seem plausible. The reason I made a face with the Steven Nelson thing is because while he has played in a slot before, I'm thinking primarily in his couple of years in Pittsburgh, his first 4 years of his career and the last 2 of them, he has played outside. So the first 4 years of his career, he was in Kansas City, most notably on the opposite side of Marcus Peters when Marcus Peters had his exceptional season. Then he went to Pittsburgh for a couple of years, 1 season in Philadelphia, then the past 2, so 2022, 2023 in Texas, well, in Houston with the Texans. Fairly decent grades. Like his weakest one was his rookie season, and then every single one after that has been at least a 63 overall grade. His coverage grade has never been lower than a 61.4, which was 2021 in Philadelphia. And his tackling grades have always been pretty good. Run defense is pretty good. He's the kind of corner we want. And the good thing for him here is that we won't hold his 5'11" height against him. He is shorter than that 6 foot range that quite a lot of teams hold against corners to play on the outside. We're not like that. You look at Jerry, who is shorter than 6 foot. You look at Amik, who supposedly, according to some reporters, he's been said, oh yeah, you might be playing outside, which again, I hinted at in the Discord last week when the Arnold news broke and Mosey was activated off IR, that because Mosley was seen as the starter in the slot before his injury in camp. That might be the play, short term at least, is move Meek outside, bring Mosley into the slot. Seems the best of both worlds. But if we do bring a guy in, I would probably side Nelson, because even though Jerry has been here before, there was obviously the falling out in inverted commas where after where we cut him and he did seem fairly happy to be on his way away from here. I remember the goodbye tweet. While Zef saying goodbye to the fans, some might have read it a bit negatively against the regime.
Yeah.
Plus, with Stephen Nelson, he's that veteran option. And while that sometimes doesn't work out, I said the same about Kindle Vildor last year. He was a veteran option. Just because you've got that bank of experience with him, he should be able to integrate into the scheme a lot easier, because this is a new scheme on the back end. We've gone from that sort of cover 2 scheme that we were running the past couple of years when Jerry was here. We're now a cover 1 quarters heavy scheme. Nelson would have experience of that. I believe he played that in Kansas City. So he has experience that scheme. But either option would definitely work. Or, as I said, it might be, while we wait for that, Meek's moved outside and we signed someone off the practice squad. I know, as we'll come on to in a bit, there's been a couple of injuries and there's a couple of guys on the practice squad that might bear elevating. But if we need to elevate more than 3, one of them might have to get signed. And there's a couple of names there that I'm like, you might be it.
So Stephen Nelson retired in the off-season, saying that he wanted to spend more time with his family, he was having a newborn coming, and that he wouldn't reject the idea of coming back for the right opportunity. He was going to keep his body in shape, but he just wants to take a step back and enjoy being with his family. So that's his current status, but obviously he's left the door open. In his career, he played 130 games with 115 starts. He was uninjured in the final 6 years of his career, starting every single game. Actually, sorry, there were... maybe that's not quite true. He played at least 15 games in each of the last 6 seasons. I'll say that. So if he was missing a game here or there, it was 1 or 2 a year at most. He didn't have any interceptions in his first 3 years, and then he got 13 in those final 6, including 4 last season. He's got 2 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, only 1 sack in his career, but 456 tackles. The man was productive, efficient, played very well, even up to his last year in Houston last season, where, of course, the Texans surprised everyone by not being the poor team everyone thought they were going to be, but, you know, winning their division and making a run and looking like they could actually make some noise. So I remember always respecting his play. I remember him especially at Pittsburgh, just because his level was so high, especially in that first season. So that really sticks out. So maybe if that comes, we're just speculating. So we'll move on from that now and talk about this game. So no news from Chicago's side. We'll get on to the injury report in a minute, which I'll put in news, but there's no point in addressing that here. I went through with our guest about Chicago's record, 4-7, and their wins and losses for this game. The betting by Bet365, Chicago are plus 400. The Lions are minus 550 on the money line. That means in English money, Lions are 11-2 on. Detroit are minus 10 on the spread, and the over-under is 48.5 points. So injury report. On Thursday, did not practice for the Lions was Davis, Decker, and Raymond. Limited in practice, Monty and Amon-Ra trending both in the right direction. After his illness, Reeder was in full practice, and Arnold for his second day was also full practice. For the Bears, Elijah Hicks, the safety, again did not practice, which is not great considering Jaquan Brisker is on IR still with his concussion, and we may be looking at the end of his career. Not sure, but that's very sad. And offensive tackle Ryan Bates was limited in practice for the second straight day with a concussion. I would say that he is not trending in the right direction, because you would need to have at least a full practice tomorrow for him to be able to clear the protocol. So, a little bit weak in that backup tackle position, potentially. Sorry, Ash.
I'm just thinking with Bates, I think it's just a little thing. I think he's a guard with them this year. I know he's played outside, but it's one of them. But yeah, Hicks as well. I don't know if they'll be, well, he probably won't go if he didn't go last week. But the guy they had come up in relief of him played pretty well, because it's the the husband of the gymnast, Simone Biles, to Jonathan Owens, who obviously forced that fumble last week. So maybe they're not too unhappy if Elijah Hicks doesn't go, because that's someone you're keeping, someone who's productive in the line. But yeah, for them, that's two veteran options potentially not going, which will hurt them. We're in the situation they are right now, where they need to learn how to win in a way. And those are two guys that could have helped.
All right, let's go into their team in a bit more detail. So I'm going to put up their starting 11 as expected for their offense on the screen now, and I'll go through the depth charts. So, starting quarterback is Caleb Williams. Behind him, Bagent Zero, Tyson Bagent, former UDFA in the 2023 NFL draft. He looked fantastic last season, given where his draft stock was. Very, very happy to see him doing well. And actually, I think Caleb and him could make a good tandem generally in terms of helping each other. I think Williams has the right sort of skill set to help Bagent along in his career. Running backs, DeAndre Swift, as we mentioned. They also have Roschon Johnson behind, who's a short yardage power back, and then Travis Homer behind that. They did trade away, oh my God, why have I forgotten
Khalil
his name?
Herbert.
Thank you very much. For a bag of peanuts. I think it was a 7th round pick. Wide receivers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. Behind them, Colin Johnson, DeAndre Carter, who's also the returner, and then injured is Tyler Scott. Tight ends, they've got Cole Kmet, who is an absolute warrior. He's one of the best in the league. Behind him is Gerald Everett and Mercedes Lewis, who just won't retire. And then the front five is Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, Matt Pratt, and Darnell Wright. Behind them, Larry Borum, Doug Kramer, and Jake Curhan. Injured is Ryan Bates, as you mentioned. And 3rd round pick this year, Kiran Amagaji, whatever the fuck his name is.
You got it right the first time.
There we go. Anyway, it's, I would say, personnel-wise, I think a fairly complete offense. The wide receivers, the first three, fantastic. Cole Kmet, excellent. Caleb is going to be a rookie quarterback, but the quality is clearly there. Swift will argue about till the cows come home. I'm very, very glad that Ryan is happy with him, because 4 yards a carry, the success rate is high for DeAndre Swift.
No, it's not. It is the
41.7.
lowest, which is the lowest of his career.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, maybe it's not working out so well then. But
yeah.
Regardless. Anyway, let me finish off this point.
Yeah.
Let me finish off this point. Swift at running back, make your argument on him. And then when it comes to getting some of the key positions right, left tackle Braxton Jones, can you upgrade him? Yes. Is he in league average left tackle? Probably. Tevin Jenkins, above average left guard. Darnell Wright, above average right tackle. Maybe none of those three are the league's best at their position, but they're solid players. Where it really falls down is at the other two spots on that offensive line, and it kind of has killed them at times. Centre Coleman Shelton, right guard Matt Pryor, it's weak. And maybe replacement level off the street average player. You know, like, I think there's some clear needs in those two positions for the Chicago Bears in this upcoming draft cycle or free agency.
Yeah, so with the DeAndre Swift thing, yeah, it's the lowest he's had when he hasn't had massive injuries. He had a lower one was 2021 with us, which was 34.6%. So again, it seems I'm the big guy with success right now with what I do on Twitter and Blue Sky and that. So to reiterate, success rate is basically how successful your carries are. First and second down is, do you get halfway between, at least half the distance between you and the sticks? And then 3rd and 4th down is, do you convert? Do you get the sticks or beyond? We currently have the 3rd and 4th best backs in the league at that, with Monty and Gibbs, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, Swift, I know, obviously, our great guest said he's seemingly turning it around. I'm looking at the stats and I don't agree. Like, okay, yeah, maybe the receiving wise, he's keeping it up, but you look at his rushing yardage. He obviously started the year slow, but then he exploded against the Redskins with that 130-yard performance.
Against who?
The Commanders. Sorry. Oh no! I've been cancelled. Oh no!
Shut it down.
No. Oh Jesus. But yeah, so exploded against the Commanders, did all right against the Jags, and then Carolina and the Rams. And it's just gone downhill from there again. 20 yards against the Colts on 13 carries, 14 carries for 18 yards against the Texans, 10 carries for 30 yards against the Titans. I think he's had his few good games this season, and now he's going back to usual DeAndre Swift. We've all been there. We've seen it so many times as Lions fans where he has a couple of great games. Like, yes, finally, we're getting the Georgia DeAndre Swift. And then old John, like the usual DeAndre Swift comes at me like, no. The only thing that makes me happy about it is that my head coach of flag football picked him as his third round pick in fantasy, and he's absolutely regretting it. That's the only thing I love about it. But I agree everywhere else. Like, we all know, everyone that listens to the podcast know how much I love Rome Odunze in the draft ever since we saw him at Washington. It was 2 years ago when he was originally supposed to come out as a junior. I was like, please, stop at day 3. Let's pick him. Developing behind Josh Reynolds. There's our excellent future. Obviously, stays in college. Becomes one of the best college receivers last year. Gets himself picked in the top 10 this year to the Bears, which Matt can testify made me very, very unhappy when it got picked and the pick got announced live. DJ Moore he's done it on so many bad teams. I remember him on the Carolina Panthers teams when it was him and Curtis Samuel. He's an absolute dog of a wide receiver in the best way. He can play all 3 positions. He can do it, even though then he also, just lips off halfway through plays, it seems, with the Bears. So maybe that's going downhill. And Keenan Allen is a good slot receiver. I don't want to toot my own horn and kind of predict his fall off. Even though I did say when they traded for him, I don't think it's going to fully work out for them. They're not going to get a wide receiver 1 out of him. It's kind of right, but they don't need that because they've got DJ Moore who's doing good. Rome Odunze is finally getting there after some poor starts. Trust me, I know I drafted him in fantasy thinking, oh yeah, him and Caleb Williams are going to love each other. Dropped him before this explosion has happened. Great receiver trip up there with the Bengals one of the past couple of years with Higgins, Chase, and Tyler Boyd. So I'm really just at that. Cole Kmet. He's a really good tight end. I don't want to say he's one of the top 5 in the league, but he's in that sort of 6 to 12 range that, depending on the week, can play like a top 5 tight end, but sometimes just goes missing. Kind of like Austin Hooper. He's like the hot Austin Hooper in a way, but the new Austin Hooper, where he has potential to do it. So obviously Austin Hooper's the guy who got himself that massive contract with the Falcons, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And just did nothing afterwards. Caleb Williams, again, he was my QB2 in this class. I love Drake May more. He's showing those flashes that you saw at USC. He's kind of used to having playing hero ball. But this past couple of weeks with Thomas Brown coming in, who's learned from his mistakes last year with Bryce Young, has made things easier for him. So, as we saw, there was a lot of complicated stuff. Because Shane Waldron is a good offensive coordinator. He was with Seattle. Like, you can see what's kind of happened with there, especially with the early down passing sort of efficiency since he's gone to Chicago. That's gone downhill as well. But this just wasn't the right situation. He's too complicated for a rookie quarterback. Thomas Brown coming in, simplifying things, doing a lot more pre-snap motion, play action, spread formation, stuff that they weren't doing early in the season, but easing his reads while he gets up to speed with the NFL game. It has really worked. But yeah, the offensive line needs a bit of help. Like, Shelton is definitely an upgrade on what they had last year at center. Maybe it's a bit of addition by subtraction with the waiving of Nate Davis a couple of weeks ago, even though, well, mostly because Nate Davis unfortunately wasn't playing. Obviously, he had personal stuff going on, but maybe it's a bit of addition subtraction there because Matt Pryor hasn't been exactly bad. So he's actually been their second best pass blocker this season behind the former Ghostbuster Bill Murray, who's got the best one. So actually, out of the starters, Matt Pryor's been their best pass blocker. But again, he's not been as good in run blocking. They're getting there. I know, obviously, I keep joking about Ryan Poles being a former offensive lineman himself. Why can't you draft them properly? They're slowly getting there. Maybe with another draft cycle where they have more than 3 picks and they don't waste one of them on a punter, as we'll come on to in a bit, they'll get there. But they're seemingly weathering the storm on offense this year, and it's getting there. Is it the only solace I take is I remember us discussing the Colts last week and Anthony Richardson looking absolutely amazing. Like, oh yeah, is he can continue it? We saw what happened there, so I can kind of have a bit of faith that maybe with how good our defense is playing, even with the injuries, we can halt that progress, shall we say, make it plateau. Like he'll still look good. He'll still make those throws just like AR did against us this past week. But I don't have and I don't expect them to throw for like 400 yards because that's just not what the Bears do.
Let me go through some of the overall stats, the offensive stats, talk about some of the grades, and then go into a bit about what happened last week. So overall, this team is 17th by PFF, 24th by DVOA, and 18th by EPA, so in the same sort of range. PFF has this offense 26th overall, and EPA has it 25th, so both think this is a below-average offense. Led by Caleb Williams, 233 of 372. That's a completion rate of 62.6%. 11 touchdowns, 5 picks, passer rating of 84.9, QBR of 48.8. Also 55 for 339 on the ground. PFF grade of 67.5. Running back DeAndre Swift, 168 carries for 665 yards. That is 4 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. Also, 31 of 36 for 278 in the air. So that's a smidge under 10 yards a carry. Maybe it's 9. It is 9 yards a carry if my mental maths is correct. PFF grade of 60.5. Leading wide receiver DJ Moore, we mentioned. 7 carries for 36 yards. 54 of 80 through the air for 566. 10.5 yards per reception and 4 touchdowns. PFF grade of 68.8. And Cole Kmet, we mentioned the tight end. 39 of 47 for 422. That's 10.8 yards per reception. That's more than DJ Moore. Crazy. PFF grade of 67.8. Other good grades in this team. Tevin Jenkins, guard, 77.6. Tackle Braxton Jones, 75.4. Tackle Darnell Wright is 74.2. So those 3 we mentioned on the offensive line is borne out by the PFF grades. Other not so great grades in there. Slot receiver Keenan Allen, 60.4. The drop bug has unfortunately hit him this year. He's not been the player that he used to be at LA, although he's still a capable player. It's just he's now a bit streakier than he used to be. And the backup tight end Gerald Everett, who also came over from LA, 45.2 for him. He's the worst of anyone who's taken any sort of significant snaps so far this season. And they're a really weird team. Because when it comes to those high leverage downs, on third down, they're one of the worst in the league, converting 32% of the time for 29th in the NFL. But on fourth down, having done fourth down quite a lot, 26 attempts, they're 7th in the NFL in conversions, 65%. And in the red zone, which is not unlike third down in it being high leverage situation and potentially where third down is artificially condensed area of the field because you're trying to get to the sticks. In the red zone, it's physically constrained, but they're not dissimilar to each other. Third down, they're 29th. In the red zone, they're 5th, converting 17 of their 26 trips for touchdowns. That's 65%. So very, very different kind of fates in those two situations. Normally, you see them go hand in hand. It kind of often goes with, can you get yourself into third and short? And do you have a running back from third and short that you can trust? And I think that might be where the issue is here. This team is putting itself into a lot of third and longs, but actually from third and short, they're good and can get it done. So in the red zone, when they've been getting themselves into good situations, they've converted for those touchdowns. Whereas when it comes to third down, they often find themselves in 3rd and 8 or worse. And that's no situation for a rookie quarterback to find themselves in. Looking at what happened against the Vikings in their overtime loss, and a flag on their first play on offense, I was holding on Swift. So Swift in pass protection, the Vikings overloaded the right-hand side of the offensive line, brought one edge rusher against right tackle Darnell Wright, which means Swift had to take the other guy. And Swift just had no chance. He's not that guy in pass protection. So good luck. Let's see the Lions do some of that. Caleb just rushed all day against this Minnesota defensive line. We obviously know exactly what you're going to get from that Minnesota team. Lots of phantom pressure. They're going to bring 8. They're going to bring 3. And you have no idea what's going to happen. So it was tough for that offensive line in Chicago. They were lucky to get away with holding in the end zone. So after the Bears turned over the Vikings at the 2-yard line, Caleb was dancing around in the end zone, which is a recipe for disaster, not because he's trying to extend the play, but any holding in the end zone is a safety. It happened in 2 consecutive plays and it wasn't called. So, nice swift rush with Wright pulling outside the tight end. So when they can do that sort of crack toss play with a pulling lineman, that looks really nice. Some of the tight window throws in this game by Caleb were exceptional. So one was to Allen, which he kind of got against cover 2 in between the corner and the safety who came down on it. No, that was against corner and linebacker, that one. Anyway, there was another one later on in the game. He's so good against pressure, just kind of has a right feeling about it most of the time, has the odd brain dead play, especially the one in overtime. But, you know, he has that sort of internal clock and that sort of sixth sense for feeling the pressure that some of those special quarterbacks just seem to have that others don't. In this particular play, he was running towards the near sideline when it looked like it was going to be left for dead. It looked like he should throw it out of bounds. He looked like he should just run it out of play. Instead, he chucks it up. And it's one of those you kind of just expect for it to come down as an interception when you have a sort of desperation play. Instead, loops over the corner to a DeAndre Swift and a scramble drill who's bailing upfield. And a brilliant catch over his shoulder. I mean, one of the better plays in the NFL this season. It was pretty special for Swift to run the route that he ran in the scramble drill, for Caleb to see him, and from that angle running out of bounds to be able to get it down the seam when he's not able to set his feet or anything like that. It was quite something. That was all the way down to the Minnesota 11. That drive ended off with Roschon Johnson with 2 goal line carries and great blocking to get the tough yards. Later on in this, I mean, I didn't really talk to it about, we didn't talk about it with our guest, but there's a lot of running on first down for not many yards. The Lions fans know exactly how this feels. There was a lot of run for no gain, run for 2 yards, oops, I'm in 3rd and 8. Run past with no imagination whatsoever. It was so frustrating to watch, even with this offensive coordinator, potentially better than Shane Waldron for what Caleb is doing. Sometimes I thought, you need to do something else here. And later on, they did, but they were behind the sticks at this point. You know, they're behind the 8 ball, 15 points down later on, and then they changed. And it's like, but you're too late now. What else did we have? So he got sacked trying to go through his progressions, Caleb, and just didn't see Jonathan Grenard behind him. So I said the internal clock looks good, but sometimes he is prone to the odd error like that. Almost had a pick when he tried to gun it on 3rd and 9. Really good reaction by the Minnesota linebacker on that one. Good 2-minute drill to end the first half, but it stalled when a pass to Odunze, he went out of bounds going backwards, and that kept the clock running. They then couldn't run the next play without losing too much time and had to settle for a field goal. What else did we have in here? Seam passes, I mentioned it to our guest, but absolutely incredible. One to Komet up the seam for 20. There were several others. On 4th and 4 with the game on the line, he scrambled and hopped over men on the floor to scramble for a first. That was like an electric play. I heard several national commentators saying 3 weeks ago, with how depressing everything was around there, he probably just nicks one of the guys on the ground for a sack instead of actually making that one. They had a 3rd and 3 and a throw to Komet, which was just a really bad drop by him. He absolutely gunned it under pressure, but it's in the breadbasket, and that meant that you couldn't move the chains, and you had to end up punting in that situation afterwards. They threw a lot of screens, and a lot of it didn't work. We know against the Vikings, you know how quick that defense is, so sometimes the screen game just isn't very wise. They actually ended up getting a touchdown on one of those, though, because he called it perfectly. I think it was 2nd and goal from the 5 or something like that. 1st and goal from the 10, sorry. And called a wide receiver screen into an 8-man blitz. So DJ Moore just kind of walked in. It was really aesthetically pleasing to watch because it's just a perfect play at the perfect time. Later on in the game, another 4th down big, absolutely guns it to Odunze. This one is the one I was talking about into double coverage. So you got Murphy as the corner, trailing Odunze quite well. Bynum, the safety, sees what's happening and tries to break on the ball. But the ball's thrown so hard and Odunze's catch is so strong Dunze's strength is really underrated. That moved the chains for about 30 odd yards, and that was actually ended up in the touchdown to bring it to within 3. The 2-point score after the touchdown was really good too. So like 2-step drop out of shotgun and just absolutely hammers it on a slant route back of the end zone to DJ Moore. Obviously, they get the onside kick, which is the first onside kick recovery this season by any team. And then they've got like 30 seconds and no timeouts from that spot to get a field goal. And he just throws a bullet to DJ Moore over the middle to get them in range for the spike. I mean, I don't know what the Vikings are playing at, but it was really poor coverage. Great layering of the throw, though, to get it in between the second and third layers of the defense. But then you get to overtime after they get the field goal there, and Caleb just takes an awful sack. For reference, the pass protection is excellent, but so's the coverage. So Caleb sits in the pocket and waits, and waits, and waits, and waits, and waits until he gets hit. And he's sitting back there for, I think, 7 or 8 seconds. Like, at some point, run with it, throw it away. Do not do this to your offensive line, because that's just mean. And it's just not good for your football team. They ended up then on 3rd and 21 and then had a delay of game to put them at 3rd and 26. The punt, to the Bears' credit after that, was really good. And the Vikings continued to shoot themselves in the foot in the ensuing next possession. But the coverage was just poor, and Darnold hit on 3rd downs consistently in that final drive. So they got the field goal to win. We'll come on to the defense and a bit more special teams in just a minute. But did you watch the game? It was one of the more exciting games in the league this season. I mean, the Bears did not deserve to be anywhere close in this game. But then what they did in that final 2.5 minutes was pretty compelling viewing. And you know what? Considering the run pass, considering the late comeback, exceptionally familiar to me.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. And yeah, I felt the same. But I haven't watched all of it. I will finish off my rewatch properly tomorrow while I finish off the article. But yeah, I agree. Like, there was some really damn good throws in there. Like, I agree completely with the one to a Dunze. That's why I liked him. But they've got everything there, and they're slowly putting it together. They are really slowly to putting it together. Like, you can really see the improvement the past couple of weeks. So I've got like all my stats up on that. So overall this season so far, Caleb is 30th in EPA per play, roughly. Ever since they've changed their coordinator to Thomas Brown, he's gone up to 12th. That's in 2 weeks. I mean, they've like isolated it so that 28 falls to include past couple weeks, but you can see even in the space of 2 weeks, changing your offensive coordinator, making things simpler, putting all the sort of the motions and stuff in. It's really helped, but at the same time, the good thing is, in a way, is it's a McVay system. Thomas Brown comes from the McVay system. That's where he was for a good couple of years. He was the running backs coach there, took over as a tight ends coach in his last season. Then before he went over to the Panthers, we are built to play that kind of system. It's pretty much every week that we say this, isn't it? That we face some form of a Shanahan scheme, and then we get to say, "Oh, but we're built to play that," because that's literally what every other team in our division plays. Where did Kevin O'Connell come from? Where does the Bears head coach LaFleur come from? They come from that Shanahan McVay scheme. We will know how to go against it. And they can beat, especially with the cornerback injuries we've got. Redunze, Moore, Allen will probably be able to get quite a lot of yards. But at the same time, I honestly think, and this might be a really bad, it is predicting what my hot takes tomorrow Martel's going to be. I think this could be a coming out game for Arnold. Now, with the pressure on him, with Davis being out, he has to be the cornerback one. I could see him kind of putting it all together. He had to sit out the game against the Colts. I could see kind of the pressure being on. He puts it all together. He kind of has that, I can't afford to overthink it here. I've just got to go out and play instinctually, and it'll just switch on for him. because this will be a high pressure situation for him, with the other corners having to deal with the other good receivers, with Caleb on this sort of uptick, with the pass protection of the Bears being equitable almost to what we face with the Colts in a way, just inverted. So instead of the issue being the sort of, well, actually not inverted in a way, like the issue is going to be the guards in the center rather than the tackles. That's what the Colts issue was, but obviously they also had the issue at the left tackle. It's going to be very similar. It's going to be eerily similar, and I can really see us. It probably won't be what it was like against the Jags and the Colts. We hold themselves to touchdown. They probably will score a touchdown or two on us, but it's not going to be a massive explosive come out. This is like the day that Caleb Williams really goes out and says, "This is why the number 1 overall pick." It'll probably be like, "This is why I deserve to be picked," but it's not going to be like a 400, as I said, 400-yard, free passing touchdown kind of day for him. It'll probably be more like a 250-yard, 2 passing touchdown day from him. That's not going to be enough, unfortunately, with how good our offense is.
Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. So just on the overall stats, PFF has this team 6th in PFF grade. EPA has them 8th. So this is a well-regarded defense, despite Ryan, as our guest at the top of the show, saying that they have regressed. So the stats would not necessarily agree. Let's talk about some of their depth charts. I haven't gone through that yet, so let's put that on the screen now. So their front 4 is pretty strong. Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Byron Cowell, and DeMarcus Walker. They're backed up by Darrell Taylor, Chris Williams, Zach Pickens, Austin Booker, Jacob Martin, and Daniel Hardy, with Dominic Robertson injured. The linebackers, they play a lot of base. I've shown you the nickel here on the screen, but they do play a lot of 3 linebacker sets because their third linebacker is just one of those players you want to root for, despite who he plays for. In nickel, they will have TJ Edwards as the weak side linebacker and Tremaine Edmonds as the Mike. They'll be backed up by that third linebacker, Jack Sanborn. I mentioned he'll play a lot of reps. You've also got Amen Ogbongbemiga. Ogbongbemiga. I've never said that name before. And then Noah Sewell is their other backup linebacker. Their nickelback is Kyler Gordon with Josh Blackwell behind him. Starting corners are Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson, backed up by Terrell Smith, and then Amir Speed is injured. Safeties, they've got Kevin Byard and Jonathan Owens, backed up by Tarvarius Moore, and Elijah Hicks is injured. And I mentioned the players on IR earlier, just to tell you about their special teamers as well. Rookie punter Tory Taylor, kicker Cairo Santos will come on to him, and former Lions long snapper from last year, Scott Daly, is the long snapper. The holder is Tory Taylor, the punter. Right, just looking through the practice squad to see if there's anyone worth mentioning. Samori Toure, former Packer, is on there. JT Woods, safety of note. Yep. Otherwise, no one to write home about, I don't think.
Adrian Colbert's a good sort of veteran safety. He's most notable for played for the Titans. I expect him to be elevated, to be honest, if Hicks doesn't go.
All right.
And then Ricky Stromberg, the former Arkansas center.
So let's go through some stats then. Gervon Dexter, the leading defensive tackle, 1 pass defended and a fumble recovery, 4 sacks from the interior, 35 tackles, 3 TFLs, 15 quarterback hits, and a PFF grade of 75.5. Montez Sweat's the leading edge rusher, traded to the Bears last year. 2 passes defended and a forced fumble. Only 4.5 sacks so far this season, so only half a sack ahead of Dexter. 20 tackles, 7 TFLs, 9 quarterback hits. PFF grade of 69.6 in what's regarded, I think, as a year of slight regression for him so far. Leading linebackers TJ Edwards, the high-priced free agent acquisition last year from the Bills, I want to say.
No, it was the Eagles.
Yeah,
it was the Eagles.
Damn it. Bills was Tremaine Edmonds, wasn't it? No, I'm going to get this all wrong.
No, Tremaine Edmonds was the Bills, yes.
Okay, cool. I'm not a total moron. TJ Edwards, 1 interception, 2 passes defended, forced fumble and a fumble recovery, a sack, 87 tackles, 6 TFLs, 2 quarterback hits, a PFF grade of 61.9. And Jalen Johnson, they did pay him eventually, and he's regressed a little. 2 interceptions, 6 passes defended, 30 tackles, 4 TFLs, PFF grade of 68.3, not the 80 grade that he was looking at last year. Free agent acquisition in this offseason, Kevin Byard at safety, 1 interception, 4 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, a sack, 84 tackles, 3 TFLs, a quarterback hit, and a PFF grade of 80 and a bounce back year for him. Other good grades in there, edge DeMarcus Walker 71.9, Kyler Gordon nickelback 71.3, but other poor grades in there, starting corner Tyreek Stevenson 55.8, and the other starting linebacker Tremaine Edmonds 55.6. Here's where it gets fun for the Bears on defense. On 3rd down, they are 7th. On 4th down, they are 9th. And in the red zone, they are 4th. They have only given up 16 touchdowns on 39 trips in the red zone. That's 41% of the time. They are absolutely money when it comes to high leverage situations on defense, which I think makes it all the more egregious that this offense hasn't been able to back up how good that defense has been in those high leverage situations. Looking at how things happened against Minnesota, Minnesota hit a stretch play on the very first play of the game. Great gap scheme blocking on this stretch play, and the Bears just struggled to fight through it. I mean, I think they got 10 yards on that very first play, and it really set the tone. Poor angle was taken by the forced defensive player, cornerback Tyreek Stevenson, and Aaron Jones just made him look stupid and ran right past him for 41 yards in this first drive. They got all the way down to the Chicago 1, and Jonathan Owens just gets in to tackle Jones, but instead of going for Jones, goes for the ball and just rips it. That was at the Chicago 1, actually went down at the Chicago 2 after taking it away. I mean, you had to look twice to see it because it wasn't obvious from the coverage, but fantastic heads-up play by him. Kyler Gordon just gets a shout-out from me for his amazing drop speed. He often plays up on the line of scrimmage, but the way that he can get back into his zone is electric, and he's got good reading of the quarterback, especially when he's in zone, reading the quarterback's eyes. He breaks really quickly, and he's got good acceleration in there, so watch out for him against Amon-Ra. They got caught by Darnold on a hard count. This game was in Chicago, so Darnold had to go hard count a few times, and he caught them more than once, I think. Terrell Smith had some really nice coverage deep versus Jordan Addison as Darnold uncorked it towards the post, but it just wasn't good enough as Addison kind of boxes him out on 45 yards on the post. Might have been DPI as he gets there a tiny bit too early. If it was Terry and Arnold, it would have been called, shall we say. But the coverage was tight, and Addison did it anyway. Play action throw to Addison from the 2-yard line for the touchdown. Again, tight coverage, this time by Owens against Addison, but just a great throw and catch by Darnold to Addison. But you can see why this team is efficient on 3rd down in the red zone, because they're sticky. You know, even these catches are remarkable, even if it's a 2-yard passing touchdown, because of how perfect that throw had to be. So even though they gave up the points, notable in that way. They were taken by surprise on a very quick Darnold sneak dive. Like, it's not like any sneak I've ever seen. Normally in a sneak, you know, you get your quarterback churning the legs and staying upright. Darnold just threw himself forward about a yard behind the line of scrimmage. If he went into his own offensive lineman, he wouldn't have got there. So, odd play by the Vikings, but the snap was like half a second after getting to the line, and the Bears just weren't ready for it. So, interesting. Can we see something similar with Goff? Don't know. Darnold was picked off in the end zone aiming for Jefferson, but there was a big DPI by Jalen Johnson, who had a huge pull of the jersey on Justin Jefferson, who, you know, had 2 catches on the day for very little yardage, but had 2 DPIs against. So his stats were artificially deflated, I would say, in this game. There's a 5-yard touchdown to the corner to Jalen Naylor. And Jalen Johnson, they're playing zone, and he's in that awkward spot where he has to be able to try and break on a back corner throw, but also be able to react to a front pylon throw. He tries to cheat on the back corner and ends up just getting beaten to the front corner on the throw. I mean, Darnold's not the hardest thrower of the ball, but it's put in a good spot. Reaction's good by Naylor. Johnson's just trying to do too much, I think. You know, Billy Big Bollocks has got the big bucks, and he's trying to be a better corner than he is. Just be the player that he was last season, but he's taking on too much for me. First play of the second half. So I said before, stretch play followed by the 41-yarder to Jones afterwards. Set the tone. First play of the second half for the Vikings. Deep crosser to Addison. Not unlike the Jameson Williams touchdown. Was it last week or was it the week before? Where you run from the slot on the left-hand side of the formation in a kind of...
The week before.
Yeah. So
because we didn't score a passing touchdown last week, did we?
No, you're right. Yeah, so deep crossing route from the slot. So about 20 yards down, you flatten it out, and then you go back upfield in a kind of S shape.
Yeah.
Yes, I can't remember what that's called, but it's a 20 and in on a kind of curved out route and then curved back up. So really nicely designed play by the Vikes, and it's to Addison, who's not the fastest player in the world. That was one of the, knocks on him in this draft. But when he comes out of that throw and catch, there's no wrap on the hit that he takes. And so he's got good contact balance, so it doesn't go down. He goes all the way down the sideline for 69 yards before being tackled. And Chicago challenged the ruling of the field that he didn't go out of bounds. It was very fucking clear that he did not go out of bounds. And just to highlight how moronic Matt Eberflus is, when asked why he challenged that ruling, he said it was such a big play we couldn't afford not to. I thought it was out of bounds. It was, I'm desperate. Help. Fucking Egypt. Oh, God. Just universally panned. Fire him on the spot. Because what are you doing? I thought that just needed saying because the man is an absolute moron. The very next play, 2 interior linemen for the Bears completely ruin the interior of the Vikings. So the Vikings are running a stretch play to the left-hand side. Center and left guard both lose. And you've got 2 Chicago Bears players in the backfield on a slow developing run play. It ends up being a 5-yard tackle for a loss on a run play. Incredible. Walker then had a lovely counter against Quessenberry, who was the backup left tackle after Darisal's gone down for the season. Walker ended up with the sack on that play. Darnold then sacked again. Really nice effort by Jacob Martin. So he was chipped by the tight end. This is edge 5, by the way, Jacob Martin. Beat the tight end chip, and then trying to beat the tackle with a speed rush on the outside, then counters with a speed move on the inside. Not unlike Aiden Hutchinson. Very quite like Aiden Hutchinson. Darnold tries to escape upfield and runs straight into the spin move. It's a beautiful play by Jacob Martin. I really, really, really like that. Cornerback Jalen Johnson then had his second DPI of the game against Justin Jefferson. It was a 3rd down. Just do better. You don't need to commit that penalty. Even if Jefferson catches that, you're not even giving him a chance to drop the ball. And I know Jefferson doesn't drop many, but a DPI is a definite first down. And it was a few yards beyond the sticks. It was 3rd and 5. And you're just giving up the idea that you might be able to punt for the sake of 2 yards additionally. Why bother? Frustrating at times, this defense, because shooting themselves in the foot despite good play generally. Good coverage on a 3rd down throw towards Jefferson by Tremaine Edmonds. Broke on it really well, knocked it down. They brought a micro linebacker blitz on a 2nd and long. It was 2nd and 14, I think, and they were down 14 at the time, an early 4. So in a desperate situation, they're kind of trying these funky things that they weren't trying to do before. So the Bears tend not to blitz too much. You're not going to see the sort of Vikings-y sort of phantom pressures-y here and there. It's not that sort of thing. They just try and win with 4 in a very McVay-Shanahan sort of way. Forced a big stop on 4th and 1. So Darnold was an empty at the Chicago 36. So you think the ball's got to come out quick. But the coverage is great. That's what the Bears do. I don't know whether we're going to go for it on 4th down a lot in this game. I wouldn't like to, personally, because that's where the Bears can eat. They're good hustling to the ball generally and winning one-on-one up front. So some of these runs that we like to run outside the tackles, sometimes they get caught on these gap scheme plays. But very often, the interior linemen struggle against, those big guys up front. So can the Bears do that to us? I'm not sure, but they did it to the Vikings a lot. They had a big OPI, but then... the Vikings had a big OPI, but then on 3rd and long, a back-breaking 3rd down and long conversion to Hawkinson on the near side for 34 yards. I mean, no one near him. It was bad kind of, not coverage bust because the players were there, but they just weren't in the right spot considering what Hock was doing. 3rd down and 1, no timeouts left. 2:35 to no 2 minutes. 2 minutes to go. No timeouts. So if they or 2:35, and if they get a first down, it's 2 minutes with no timeouts, so they can kneel out. 3rd down and 1, they make the stop to force a field goal. I really think the Vikings should have just gone for it because they were up by 7 anyway. Then the Chicago Bears obviously forcing the field goal. They then get the touchdown, get the field goal after the onside kick recovery. Then they go and have their awful offensive possession. So in overtime now, game on the line, any score for the Vikings wins. Darnold gets hit for a sack on the first play, and he's so lucky he didn't fumble it. So Sweat hits him from behind, completely blind. How Darnold holds onto the ball, I don't know, but Sweat was beside himself that he didn't force the fumble. So that causes 2nd and long. Great coverage on the check down, but Hock just too strong on the catch. And then on 3rd and medium, they just give it up to Addison on a quick out. It's kind of frustrating. You saw that a few times in the Indy game against Detroit that we were breaking down yesterday. And then on 1st and 20 after a holding penalty. So they had the sack to get 2nd and 20. Holding causes 1st and 20. So the Vikings shoot themselves in the foot. But they can't stop 2 easy checkdowns for 10 yards apiece to convert for a first down, and then a big throw to Hawkinson to get down to the 9-yard line, and that's your ball game when they just kick the field goal. So, they had some good situations in there, and it's just frustrating that having watched this team as a neutral observer, as I try and be when I'm watching these teams, that they put themselves in situations which are advantageous and then couldn't convert. I'll talk about special teams in just a second afterwards, but I've talked for enough. Ash, this defense is good. And I know that we've talked about Johnson maybe taking a step back and Stevenson taking a step back. But overall, sticky coverage, put themselves in good situations, and then sometimes just brain-dead plays are shooting them in the foot in high-leverage situations. I talked about 3rd down being great and red zone being great, but sometimes you need to have it. It don't have it.
Yeah. So I kind of side with our guest on this. Maybe it's because I look at the metrics. So before their bye week, the Bears were the 3rd best defense by EPA. They were really damn good. So they only allowed a 39% success rate, nearly minus 0.2 EPA per drop back, nearly about 0.042 minus rush EPA, both success rates in that below 40%. Then they come out of their bye. And since then, they've dropped. This is just after their bye, so only looking at those games. 20th. That success rate shoots up to nearly 45%. They're now giving up nearly a point every 20 plays because it goes to 0.049 EPA per play. So that's a massive jump. The drop back EPA jumps to nearly 0.16 EPA per drop back. The success rate jumps up to 50%, nearly 50%. The rush EPA actually kind of gets a bit better. So minus 0.084, but the success rate jumps up about 2%. I don't know what happened, but ever since that, they've just shot in terms of it. Maybe it's because they've tried to... Maybe it was because the Andrew Billings... is it Andrew Billings? Am I being a dum-dum? Yeah, it is Andrew Billings, and that's going to be useful in a second because I'm going to come back to that name. Ever since it might be because of that, because they've put some new stuff in, but they've really dropped in terms of the metrics. And the reason I said that Andrew Billings is quite a funny name is because I know you said you weren't exactly high on Gervon Dexter, but someone was because they scouted him for the podcast. And guess who he named as his comparison for Gervon Dexter? Andrew Billings. So it's kind of funny that they've got the veteran guy in the book. And I did like him. I thought he had some pass rush upside and he was good against the run. Was I right? Maybe. Like, is there forget there? I was obviously very much higher on Zach Pickens, who they also picked, and they've just buried on the depth chart. I wish they can cut him off this off season so we can come over here and we can actually use him right, because Zach Pickens would be great in that sort of Levi, Pascal sort of defensive tackle you can slide outside to big end kind of role. So maybe we can free him. But to sort of balance it out, I will say that I also scouted Tyreek Stevenson for this podcast, and I was very, very high on him, and I loved him. And now I feel like a dum-dum because obviously he just hasn't been it. He shows flashes of being a really damn good corner. And then, he does what he does in the Commanders game.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know. But looking at some of the other stuff, I know Eric, his article, great article as well. Eric Washington's a name that might be a bit familiar to people on the podcast because when we were looking at potential defensive line coaches last year and actually the year before as well, because obviously we had John Scott for a year. So before we hired him, I highlighted Eric Washington as a potential guy to look at because his work was particularly with the Bills the past couple of years. He was there from 2020 till this year. Very good. Look what they did with AJ Epinesa, Ed Oliver, Greg Russo. He's been able to develop guys and he's been there and done that. So he started with the Bears, actually, in 2008 under Lovie Smith, who is the last good head coach they've had, and I will not be corrected. And he was also under, and this name will send some shivers down people's spines, and I'm sorry I have to say it, but Rod Marinelli, he was also underneath him as one of the defensive coordinators in Chicago. And then he went to the Panthers with Riviera and Sean McDermott in 2011, worked his way up to being their defense coordinator, then went to, when the Panthers overhauled in 2020, went back to the Bills with McDermott. As you say, I know you said earlier, they run a lot of free linebacker sets. They're one of the highest in terms of nickel usage in the league. They are. Let me just get
historically,
it up.
they played Jack Sanborn a lot as that third guy.
So they are. I just had it in terms of base usage, with us being number one by over 10%. The Chicago Bears are 25th in the league with 18.5% of their snaps being in base, while they are the fourth highest in nickel usage with 79.9%, which is always fun.
Stand corrected.
So it's one. I agree they should be playing Jack Sanborn a lot more because he's a damn good linebacker. They got him as a UDFA 2022, I want to say, at Wisconsin, and obviously he played really well. He was one of the guys who balled out in the game, both games against us last season. He was absolutely amazing. Just kind of, thank God they're not using him. I will give you what, and this is always the fun one. What coverage do they use the most? I'll give you one guess.
I don't.
Cover 3, yeah. Every time we face cover, I know Eric. This is the one thing I got against Eric's article is that he says they're cover 2 heavy. They're not. They run cover 2 on cover 2. They use it the 14th most in the league. They use it on 15.8% of their snaps. Cover 3, they are 4th in the league in usage, 48.1%. And what coverage is? This offense designed to go against cover 3 because it's a Fangio shell scheme, and that's what we got. And Seattle scheme, that's what we do well against. And with the struggles they're having on their back end, as you're saying, they've absolutely fell off in terms of pass coverage this after their bye. I can see us attacking it. I know obviously last week wasn't a perfect game, the passing game. There was a couple of bad throws from Goff, particularly to Laporta. But at the same time, we kind of didn't need to. No one didn't need to use the passing game because obviously Monty and Gibbs were absolute beasts, but also because the Colts are fairly good passing defense. The Bears aren't. The Bears really aren't. Like in terms of overall, as I said in the EPA, overall in terms of just this season, they are the second worst now. Actually, no, that's not right. They're the second best, actually, overall in terms of this thing I'm looking at. We're third, though. So maybe it's not been as bad as I was thinking with looking at some of the other metrics, but I think we can pass on them. With Jalen Johnson sort of coming back down to earth after his big day, with Tyreek Stevenson just not working out, with Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon's kind of underrated, but this is a divisional match. Amara, in his locker room interview, says he knows that we haven't won in 8 years and he wants to fix that. With JMO kind of getting over the whole gun law, the gun thing and all that, I can see us having a really damn good passing day against the Bears. And then they're one of the worst rush defenses. So I can see Monty in a revenge game absolute balling out because we know what happens with revenge games for this team. Look at Khalif Raymond. Look at Jake Bates. Two teams have gone up against teams that's had them and said, no, actually, we're going to go elsewhere. They ball out. Dan even said in his press conference with Monty, I couldn't hold him back for playing if I wanted to. He's going to play. We are just, again, it's not, as I said last week, the Colts game, it's not going to be a 50 burger probably, but we're gonna find ways to move the ball against this defense. They might win a couple, like Sweat, if Deck doesn't go and it's Skip, or if it's Jamarco Jones. Sweat is probably going to get some run. Dexter might get some run against Glasgow if he's lined up against him, though I expect Frank to kind of help in that respect. Those linebackers, if they try and be weird with them, which they tend to do against us, we all remember the game last season where Goffrey threw interceptions to their linebacking core. They might be able to get some run against us. They might, as I said, the guest said, they might get a turnover off us. We're going to move the ball. This is going to be another 350-yard plus offensive day from us because whatever they throw against us, we'll have the answers. We're looking at Mr. Perfect here, the guy who's currently leading the league in passing success rate. We've got 2 of the top 10 receivers in passing success rate, one of whom is David Montgomery, surprisingly. Who would have thought that David Montgomery has been one of the best receivers in the league this year in terms of, again, getting the ball past the sticks. They're going to, as I said, it's not going to be a 50 burger. At least 3 touchdowns, at least, minimum.
Just going to move on to special teams observations from the game last week because I think it speaks to a lot of what might happen in terms of where the Lions might have a big advantage in this game, which is not going to be spoken about in a lot of other places. Their punter is not good. Doesn't have great hang time or length on several punts in this game. It was just one of those things, like, he wasn't putting his team in particularly great situations until the overtime punt, where he was set back a long way, and that had good hang time and was well covered. But the majority of his punts were poor. They also conceded a holding penalty on a punt reception. So, it was a terrible punt that was being kicked to them. It was received on a fair catch because of how bad it was and how close it was to the people chasing. But they ended up committing a holding penalty even though, so they had to be set back along the way. It's not a very disciplined special teams unit. They had a kickoff for Chicago, which was kicked to the 1. So we may have, they did it a couple of times. We may have a chance to return this. So look out for Khalil Dorsey, Craig Reynolds to have some chances here, potentially. Craig Reynolds? Maybe?
Yes.
Maurice Alexander, maybe?
Yeah, that kind of comes on to what I was going to say in a bit, because obviously we teased it earlier with the thing, we need some players up, and people on our Discord will know I've been saying it's going to be Maurice Alexander who's going to come up because of the Cleef injury, because I've even said it yesterday, don't know. It just feels right. This is a guy who's been there, done that as a punt returner. I know, obviously, we use Amon Ra there, but most done it, and I was just looking. Tory Taylor ranked 17th in the league in terms of hang time.
It's not good enough.
Just not good. That's not good enough, exactly.
Generally, punting isn't very good. So, when you're middle of the pack, it's still not great. And actually, when you're punting like he does, he's got good power, but he doesn't necessarily, he's hitting it hard, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's hitting it well, which means you're out-kicking your coverage, which gives teams a good chance to get some good return yardage against you. Anyway, returning to what I was saying going through this game, 48-yard field goal was blocked by Minnesota. Jerry Tillery got his hand up there. Cairo Santos, second straight game, just low kicks from distance, giving the defensive line a chance to get their hands up in there. And it wasn't the only time in this game that happened. So to end the half, they had a 49-yard field goal, which was good. There was a very high snap for that play, so we're used to that from Scott Daly. But the kick again from Cairo Santos was so low, even to get a 49-yarder. He needs to do it to get the distance. So when they were saying in the TV coverage, You've had an entire week to fix this. This is on you. There's no fixing this. Cairo Santos does not have the leg that from 48, 49 yards, he can hit a field goal without kicking it low for distance. So, if they line up for a 45-yard plus field goal, look for the Lions to be blocking it, getting their hands up there and trying their best to get to it, because there is ample opportunity to do it, and the Bears cannot fix it.
There's a particular player you need to be watching for that as well, because I think he's got close to a couple. And it's someone that we all know and love on this podcast, Levi. Yeah. I can't remember which game it was. I will have to go back and see it for my article, and I'll put it in for you guys tomorrow. But it's a particular game where the opposition was kicking the field goal and Levi nearly gets to it. And we all saw, obviously, what happened against the Packers a couple of weeks ago. So look for that. Though I'm just having a laugh now. I'm just looking at the kickoff grades for teams. Let's have a look. Cairo Santos. I mean, to be fair, I'm looking now, actually, and we're not even that much better. Cairo Santos is currently 29th in the league for kickoff grade from PFF with a 10.3. Bates is 33rd for 7.2. Don't know how that works.
No,
but
don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'm expecting Dorsey to have some good returns because the average field position they've allowed is they've averaged the opposition starting on the 30.2 yard line.
Yeah,
that is the 27th worst mark in the league.
But 30.2, when you come out to the 30, if you have a touchback, just means you've been slightly worse than a touchback, which means almost all of them have been touchbacks, apart from when they've returned it a little bit more than that, or you committed a penalty a few times, and so that's extending them to the 35 sometimes. Like, that's all that is. When PFF grade people badly for doing kickoffs, it's because they're kicking it into the end zone for touchbacks, which is negatively graded, because really, you should be hitting it into the landing zone, which theoretically should be giving you a return to the 25. Yeah. So coming out to the 30 is 5 yards worse than that. That's why that's happening. So you'll find kickers regularly get it, landing it in the landing zone where it's not being caught, which is no one, or getting it to like the 1 are going to be very highly graded compared to those hitting it 5 yards deep, which is what Bates is being asked to do, and it's what Santos is being asked to do. So, PFF, pinch salt. The Bears had a muffed punt recovery in this game, so the Vikings punter had a terrible day. This punt in particular was atrocious. It was short, it was a line drive, he kind of hit it badly, but it didn't really give the returner much of a chance to get out the way of it. Like, it was a really weird play, but DeAndre Carter's the punt returner, and the ball just kind of bounces up and into him, and he can do something about it and get out of the way, but it doesn't leave him much time to decide what he's going to do because it comes at him so fast. The Vikings end up recovering that. They go on to score. The onside kick they have, it didn't go 10. It was recovered after 7. But the Vikings player on the hands team trying to recover it ends up going and blocking one of the Chicago players and hits his leg. Like, brain dead play by the Vikings. Leads to a recovery, and the only onside recovery of the year, as I mentioned earlier. But it still happened, and it's still the team we're facing this Thursday. The clutch field goal to go to overtime is good, but again, very low, and Jerry Tillery got very close to making the block. And then, as I said, the punt in overtime was the only good punt of the day for the Bears. It was covered extremely well. The man was hit as he was receiving the ball, and he flipped the field, I think, from their 15 to the Vikings 20 or so. So it was like a 65-yard punt or something like that. Very, very impressive. Right. We've talked enough about this game, I think. So give me a score prediction. How do you think it's going?
As I've kind of alluded to throughout the thing, I think they're going to score a couple of points on us. But at the same time, I can see us scoring more on them, obviously. Like, I know that we're currently the only division that has all 4 teams having a positive point differential. The Bears' point differential so far this season is +4. It's not that good. Like, their defense has held some teams recently, the Patriots and Cardinals, to less than 10 points. They've scored more than 20 a couple of times. not this week. I can see us winning 33-17.
I am going to call this as the Lions not covering the spread for once. I think it's going to be a one-score game, but I think the Lions will win. I think offense will be at a premium in this game, but will do enough. Maybe it's a two-score game with the Bears coming back late, again like they did last week. 24-17 feels right to me as a sort of scoreline at the end of it all. I mean, we scored 24 last week, 24 again against what in the Bears is a better defense than the Colts. So I think that sounds about right. All right, time to move on to the rest of the weekend's games. But first, a question from Brian Shook, who asks, these short weeks present a whole host of issues getting the team ready for the game. How significant is our continuity in that regard? How and what does it help most? So it's only one short week, although we are playing again on Thursday next week. Of course, we actually have a week to go for that game. And then the fact we have Thursday night football against the Packers next week gives us a mini bye, as it's deemed. We'll have 10 days to prepare for the Bills, if not 11. We don't know whether it's going to go to Monday Night Football. It's not going to go to Monday Night Football. Excellent.
No. I'm hoping it's not going to.
Oh, it better not, because I won't be able to watch it.
True, and my personal reasons, but yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I think it can't now because I think we've just passed the deadline. You have to do it. You have to give a certain amount of notice.
I thought it was 2 weeks.
Oh no! Don't say that.
I think you can still find out by Sunday. I'm not 100%. I don't know, but anyway, continuity, short weeks. We've only had a few days to prepare for this, so practices. A lot have been walkthroughs, estimated injury reports, all of this jazz. So how crucial is it to have the same team that you had in the last game, and how much of the injury is potentially going to hurt the Lions?
The injuries are definitely going to hurt a bit, obviously because we're having to work out potentially a new. What's going to happen with the tackle situation? Are we going to move Penne over to cover for Decker not being there? Are we going to do what we did against the Texans on shorter amount of time and just put Skip in at left tackle? Obviously, the cornerback injuries and that. But the thing that does help us, and obviously doesn't help the Bears in a way, is that we're used to doing this every year, which I think is the kind of thing with the continuity, is that number one, we've got continuity of being used to do it every year. Number two, we're not putting in a whole new, not trying to change all the offensive scheme like they are with the move from Waldron to Brown, keeping the same defensive coordinator as well. We're a couple of steps ahead of that in that, right? But yeah, it will hurt. We're sort of trying to cover some of our weaknesses right now because, we're having to fix tackle situation, a cornerback situation, and a punt return situation in the space of 2-3 days with walkthroughs, like both today and yesterday were walkthroughs for us. We weren't doing fully proper practices. It will affect us a bit. We're not going to look exactly great. I'm putting that out there. We will. That's what I'm saying. I'm expecting us to probably turn the ball over once because there will be more mistakes this game than there usually is just because we're on a short week. But then luckily, as you say, next week we've got we've got a 4 weeks. So I'm focusing on football again, but then again, so are the Packers. So we're both the same there. And then obviously hopefully with the Bills, we'll have that mini bye, hopefully get fully healthy then, get both Davis and Arnold fully ready back on that back end, hopefully have Decker back. We'll know what's going on with Cleve by then, so we'll have a solution. It'll be a lot easier.
Let's get to the rest of the weekend slate before we get out of here. So Lions first up on this, obviously the first game for Thanksgiving. It's a 10-point spread, so I'm saying that the Bears are going to cover that. You had it, Lions covering 10?
Yes.
Next one up is the Giants at the Cowboys. Cowboys favoured by 3.5 at home. Both teams in free fall, but Dallas got a big win last week. What do you think?
Well, luckily, it's just come out in about the last 10 minutes that Cooper Rush has said to reporters that he's looking to play. We obviously got a bit of, we don't know if Tommy DeVito is going to go, though, because he's got that forearm injury. And we saw last week that maybe the Cowboys aren't out and done. Maybe they should be, because that'll be better, because then they won't extend Mike McCarthy, though I predicted as much yesterday, so I told you so. Cowboys are going to win. Can't remember what the spread is, but I don't think they're going to cover, though. I think it's going to be close, but they've just got enough to 3.5. Yeah, I can see it being like a field goal win, so the Giants just about cover.
I have Dallas winning and covering. Next up, Dolphins at Green Bay. Green Bay favoured by 3.5 at home. It's an interesting line. It obviously is a lot colder in Green Bay than it is in Miami. Maybe that's why the spread is like that. I don't know. What do you think, Ash?
I know technically, if you look at the playoff clinching, we should be rooting maybe for a Packers win. I can see the Dolphins doing it. But I know I kind of didn't buy it in our preview for the Colts one when you said that Tua has been one of the best quarterbacks since come back from injury. He really has. And with the Packers kind of being a bit in flux again on the back end of their defenses, still haven't fully sorted it out. I can see the Dolphins putting some hurt down on them. It'll be close. So I'm saying the Dolphins win, but again, it might be like a sort of field goal either way. I'm not expecting either team to win by a lot.
This game comes down to the Dolphins' entire offense versus the Packers' run offense. Which one can be more crucial? Because Josh Jacobs was unplayable on Sunday. Yeah. But I think the Dolphins are the better team right now. And you know what? They've got more to lose. The Dolphins need to basically run the table to get in. But I think they're eminently capable of it the way they're playing right now. I think they are one of the informed teams in the NFL. Give me the Dolphins. Next up is the Vikings at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favoured by 12.5 points at home. What do you think?
As much as I love the Raiders to do an upset, I just can't see it. Obviously, Minshew is now out for the season, so they're probably starting Aidan O'Connor, who, again, I loved in the draft process as a backup that you put in for maybe a game. Well, it's not going to go well for them. So, unfortunately, for our little battle at the top of the NFL, I see the Chiefs winning and covering.
Yeah, Chiefs win and cover for me as well. This game in particular, is always a bit funky. The Raiders somehow, some way, always play the Chiefs a little bit harder than any other team and seem to give them problems even when they shouldn't. But they're just missing too much, I think, at this point, personnel-wise, to be competitive here. Next up is the Chargers at the Falcons. Chargers favoured by 1.5 on the road against the Falcons. What do you think?
We all saw it yesterday. The Chargers are damn good, especially when, Quentin Johnson can actually, catch the ball. That'll be fun. But they can't stop the run. So, but at the same time, it's one half the best defenses in the league this year for Chargers. Falcons aren't there yet. They can maybe get there next year if they add another corner and edge rusher. So I see the Chargers winning and covering.
This is a game of two flawed teams that are both good in their own way. I can see this being a Bijan game at home. I mean, for me, it's a kind of toss-up, so I'm just taking the home team as a kind of deferring of my opinion on this, because the Chargers are a slightly better team, but the Falcons have just got... When they turn it on, they look really good, and I'm going to back them at home to just turn it on day. Next one is the Steelers at the Bengals. Bengals favoured by 3 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you think?
I'm going to get bitten again, aren't I?
Yes, you are.
I can see the Steelers didn't exactly perform well when we picked them last time. I can see them getting some revenge. It's a divisional matchup. They're going to be a bit fired up. And that defense for Cincy is just not good. It's like Cincy's offense is really good, so is the Steelers' defense. Steelers' offense isn't exactly great, but it's better than the Bengals' defense. So I think that's what bears them out. So Steelers to win and then obviously cover because they're not favoured.
I'm going to take the man that probably should be MVP this season.
Burrow, yeah.
Burrow, yeah. He's been so damn good, man. And I know that defense sucks, but you know what? Russ, what he does is not sustainable. And every now and again, he's introduced luck into it, and they've been riding that for some time. They're a fundamentally good team that's been using luck on offense to get somewhere. I think it runs out against the defense, which is fundamentally flaws, but Bengals offense is better than the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So give me the Bengals to win and cover. Houston at Jacksonville. Houston underperforming of late, but favoured by 5 on the road against the Jacksonville in freefall. Doug Peterson still in post. What do you think?
Bounce back game for Stroud and Mixon. That defense is good enough to hold I think T-Law's going to be returning soon. I think he returned to practice earlier. But they're just going to tee off against those tackles. I think the Texans duo. So give me the Texans.
I've got the Texans to win, but Jacksonville to cover here. 5 is a lot of points. And the thing we know about Jacksonville is they don't give up. They're a gritty team, and they're not a quality team. But Texans away. So the Texans are away from home. It's in Jacksonville. That's going to introduce its own problems. So I think the Texans will just enough to win, but I would not be surprised to see Jacksonville win this game. Next up is Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings favour by 3.5 at home. What do you think?
I'm going spicy. Give me the person who, again, we've both agreed is a dark horse MVP candidate. And again, it's one of them. But I can see Kyler's mobility giving that Vikings defense a few issues, especially since it's kind of falling apart a bit itself. Like we all saw that last week with the game that we're discussing. So, yeah, give me the Cardinals to win.
The Vikings are playing spoiler to the Lions' entire season. If the Lions even slip up once, we're level with them in the division. And it's starting to scare me a little bit. You know, Darnold's not playing well, but this team is doing just enough to put away teams that are worse than them. And the Cardinals are worse than them. Kyler's great, but you can't get 6 points against the Seattle Seahawks and being taken seriously as a proper contender. You know what? The Vikings aren't a proper contender anyway, but they are sustainable week to week. Give me the Vikings to win and cover, as much as it pains me. If the Cardinals win, won't be surprised, but it just doesn't feel right to me. Next up, Colts at Patriots. Colts favoured by 3 away in an absolute must-win. Houston in freefall potentially. The Colts need to capitalise. I think the Houston Texans are in big trouble. Why
are you discussing the Texans when it's a Patriots game?
Because India is in the same division as the Texans.
I was so confused then. I was like, what?
No. If the Colts want to get out into the playoffs, they need to maybe run the table. They're at 5-7 after losing to us. The Texans are 6-4, 6-5, 6-4. So if the Texans don't pick up a couple of wins here, they're going to end up around 500. Can the Colts get there? Well, it starts in Foxborough against Patriots side with Drake May, who's had some really good moments, has maybe been the best rookie quarterback so far this season, but it's not a great Patriots team overall. But, does Richardson have a good day or a bad day? Do his receivers drop the ball or do they catch the ball? There's some big questions in this game.
Exactly. So, out of the two, I'm going with the team and, I guess the QB who I trust more in a bad situation, which is going to be stupid because it's the one that's probably going to hurt me and the one who actually has the less weapons. But for some reason, with it being at Foxborough, I believe, I can just see them winning at home. So give me the Patriots.
I got the Colts to win and cover. Next up, Seattle against the Jets. Seattle favoured by 2 on the road against the Jets side. With no hope, no way, no how. What do you think?
Seattle. Just, again, this is probably the one where if the Jets win, I won't be surprised. I hope Breece Hall has a bounce back game if that happens because my fantasy team's crying for it. One of them is at least. But that Jets defense just fell off the face of the earth. It's not what it was even at the start of the season. They're supposed to have the 2 of the best cornerback duo in the league, fearsome defensive line, and it just hasn't been that. So I can see the Seattle receivers, especially with JSN breaking out, I can just see them going to work against this Jets secondary, and then Kenneth Walker, Shaq Charbonnet getting the yards when they need to.
going to be a really interesting game because all this news has come out about Rodgers in the last few days about the fact that he's refused to get medical tests because he's scared that he'll be ruled out through injury because what he has suffered through this season is far more serious than he's been letting on. And that's why he's looked poor, apparently. I mean, the narrative is all coming out excusing him to his poor play. But it kind of makes sense. It sounds exactly like Rodgers, that he would just refuse to get medically tested. I mean, why would you even trust doctors? Can you not hear him say those words? Having said that, the NFC West is a terrible division of hilarity. As soon as a team gets one game above 500, they lose.
Drag down. Yeah.
Give me the Jets. If Rodgers does retire at the end of the season, which looks like a possibility, he's got no incentive to actually want to lose this game to get a good draft pick. He won't give a shit. He'll want to go out on a high. So if he does play, the Jets will have a shot. Next up, Titans at Commanders. Commanders are on a slide against a Titans team who picked up a big win against Houston in division last week. 5.5 points. It is in favour of Washington. What do you think?
Again, probably going to get burnt here. I can see the Commanders winning because they've got more talent. But in terms of form, especially as I've been saying the past couple of podcasts, I can see the Cliff Kingsbury effects coming into play here. The Commanders are really scrambling at corner. They've tried out 5 today, including Jerry. Benjamin St. Just, as much as some fans love to roast Terry and Arnold, just go watch a bit of Commanders ball and see how bad St. Just has been this season. So I can see the Commanders pulling out a close win just because they've got more talent on offense, a more consistent QB, but the Titans and that defense keep it close enough that they still cover that 5.5 spread.
It's such a hard line because if there's one thing we know about the Titans, it's that defense is blooming legit.
Yeah.
Like, it's still playing really well despite the fact that their season is basically over. I mean, but the thing about this AFC South is it's only going to take a couple of Houston losses to maybe bring everyone back into it. I think the Titans are 4-7.
They are. Let me
4-8, 4-7. I don't know.
They are 3-8. So right now, just so it's 7-5 Houston, 5-7 Indy, 3-8 Tennessee, 2-9 Jacksonville.
So at 7-5, if you told me the Texans end up 9-8, I'm kind of not surprised given how they're playing right now. Obviously, the Titans with 8 losses are basically then out of it at this stage, but they're not mathematically out of it, and they're going to keep fighting to the end. And Will Levis has no quit in him. For all me thinking that he should be like a
tight end,
I was going to say a mayonnaise salesman, but
I was going for your original draft take. I'm going to keep bringing it every single time Levis is brought up.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring up the fact that you said he should be a tight end in the league and not a QB.
I stand by it. But he plays hard. And there's no give up there. So I'm going Washington win, Titans cover. 5.5's a big spread. Especially with Washington's play just going to pot and their offensive coordinator running out of ideas quickly. Thanks, Cliff.
You're finally coming onto my train. Welcome. Yeah. Welcome.
Next game up is the first afternoon game of the week, which is Tampa Bay at the Carolina Panthers. Tampa Bay favoured by 6 on the road. What do you think?
Tampa Bay looked absolutely amazing last week. But so did the Panthers. They really did. It was mad. So I'm going to, again, favouring the side that I can have more trust in, but I favour the other side to cover. So that'll be Tampa to win, but Carolina to cover the 6-point spread.
I've got Tampa to win, and I've got Tampa to cover. The Panthers have strung together a good couple of games, but it's about trust. And fundamentally, I just think that Tampa are a well-run organisation that are going to get this sort of thing done more often than not. It's not even a score. I think if the line was 8 or 9, I'd be considering it here. But 6, I just think, should be comfortable enough for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Next up is the LA Rams at the New Orleans Saints. Rams coming off a humbling against the Eagles, are only favoured by 3 against the Saints side that is not great. What do you think?
I wouldn't go as far and say it was a humbling. Saquon Barkley went off. But the Rams offense still did stuff. It still scored. They still got a load of yards, passing yards with Staff. Kyron Williams still got his yards. So coming up against a team that is half of what the Philadelphia Eagles are, I can see them winning, especially as you say, if they obviously they lost to that, they will want to make up for that. So they're going to put a beating down upon the Saints. So I see them winning, like the Rams winning and covering. Again, if the line was, even if the line was 8, I'd probably still pick the Rams just because the Saints ain't that. They've got Kamara, and that's about it.
Yeah. I'm so torn.
Okay, Nasty and Brugger.
Great podcasting here. Just to say something, give me the Rams to win and the Saints to cover.
Ooh.
I just think that the line is really good. Stafford's playing great as well. Yeah, but it's at home for the Saints, and Carr is still Carr. I mean, you have a look at some of the advanced metrics. He's still having a heck of a good season despite everything, which is really funny to me because he's just always been that guy. But anyway.
I think with advanced metrics, I'd love to, obviously, as much as I love them, they are very much propped up by their first 2 weeks for him.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's no doubt.
If I take it out, hang on. I can actually do that, one of my things. Carr, if you take out the first 2 weeks, is 13th in the league. It's actually not too bad. But with those first 2 weeks, he is 6th.
Yeah, okay, so big difference, but still, 13th in the NFL is good company at quarterback. So, anyway. Next game up, Eagles at Baltimore, and Eagles after maybe the most impressive win of the season by any team in terms of how they took over a game. And going up against the Baltimore side has shown they have flaws despite having an MVP level season by their quarterback and an MVP level season from their running back, that they still managed to stack some bad losses at some bad times. Ravens are favoured by 3 at home. What on earth's going to happen here?
You know how torn you were with this previous game. That's how I feel about this one, because
I am not torn on this game at all.
I really am, because we saw that last night, the Rams, the Ravens can be passed on. They're one of the worst secondaries for EPA this season. But against a Chargers team that is kind of like what the Eagles are, a very good defense, an offense that is finally rising up again, the QB is kind of waking up. They still won yesterday. I trust John Harbaugh a lot more than I trust Sirianni in Philadelphia. So I am taking the Ravens to win and cover right now. If the line was even a point or two higher, I'd be torn. I'd be very torn. But I'm going with that, even though it's that plus the fact, obviously, I want the Eagles to lose because that makes our playoff push a lot easier. But with how Saquon played, I can see him taking over, and that's painful.
I have the Eagles to win by more than 1 score in this game. I'm not torn whatsoever about this. Ravens are not just one of the worst passing defenses in the league. I just don't think it's a good defense, full stop. And this Eagles side is so dominant on the offensive line, especially when they got Mylarsa back. It's made the world of difference. Hurts with his legs, Saquon with his legs, and Hurts doing a little bit with his arm. Maybe Devonta Smith is back for this game as well. Not sure. He was out last week.
I will have a look.
But anyway, I think Eagles by 10 is my call on that game, and I think I will put money on that. Sunday Night Football is San Francisco 49ers at the Buffalo Bills. San Francisco are not dead yet. Only 1 game under 500 in a division where no one is more than 1 game above 500. So only 1 game back. But going to Buffalo against maybe the second best team, third best team in the NFL right now. Josh Allen having an MVP level season. Buffalo favoured by 7 at home. Is Brock Purdy back? encouraging signs still doesn't sound good to me, to be honest. Ash, what do you think?
Actually, you know what, I'm doing all this. Give me the Bills. Like, as you were saying, if Birdie had to miss a game because that shoulder injury, it's going to linger a bit, even if he does come back this week. And CMC is not what it used to be. They had to rely on him last week, and it didn't happen. And the Packers' run defense, isn't exactly great, which is why even when we predicted him last week's game, I was like, oh, yeah, if Purdy's got the shoulder which he can play, I'll trust him just enough to win it close. Here, I don't. Like, Allen's playing great. Mari Cooper, it's really interesting offense. Keon Coleman, I think, will be back this week as well, giving them that deep possession threat that kind of we've got with Patrick. And that defense will do enough to make Brandon Allen and CMC's life hell. So give me the Bills to win and cover.
Yeah, I have Bills winning and covering as well. Devonta Smith?
They haven't practiced yet. It'll be
right, of course, yes,
tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. Monday Night Football is Browns at Broncos. Broncos favoured by 5.5 at home. Browns obviously got a big win recently. They're not quitting yet, but the Broncos are so much better than expected all the way through the season. Nix is my offensive rookie of the year. I'll just say that now. I put money on it in pre-season, so I had the take. I had the take before the take. But anyway, 5.5 points. What do you think?
Yeah, give me the Broncos. As much as I love listening to Jameis Winston's victory speeches, as much as I harbour a bit of love for him in my heart, being an FSU fan, I like seeing the downfall of Kevin Stefanski, to be honest. Like, as much as I try to back it, obviously I know he won Coach of the Year last year, and I try to explain it, at least the rationale of why he won it. He shouldn't have won it. It should have been Dan. Hopefully this year, and obviously I think Jim Sports won Assistant Coach of the Year when it should have been Ben. Give me the downfall of the Browns. Give me the Broncos, please.
Yeah, I have the Broncos to win and cover as well. Right, that is the entire slate. That is your lot for this preview. So I hope you have an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving to all you guys out there who are celebrating. We will not be live, I do not think, unless Ant puts together a play-by-play stream. I have a work commitment, which means I cannot watch the game during. I will see the first half while I'm getting ready to go out, but I'm at a conference, which is fun. The review show will be Monday because I'm also going to Liverpool for the Liverpool City game. So, review show Monday.
You could have a great time.
Yeah, maybe. So, review show for this game is going to be on Monday after somehow I'm going to have a chance to watch this game. The Packers preview show then, because it's Thursday Night Football, will again then be Tuesday. So we're going to go back to back again at the start of next week. Monday, Tuesday shows, and potentially the College Football Podcast will be on the Tuesday as well. So we might be having 3 shows in 2 days again. So wonderful news for next week. You know where to find us on socials. I won't bore you with it. It's going to be a great week. Look after yourselves. Have a great family day on Thursday. Shout us out on Twitter. I'm sure Ant will be live doing the tweet stream and what have you. We'll see you on Monday for the recap show. Ash, thanks for doing this for me. Cheers and shout out to Ryan for coming on as our guest at the top of the show. Fantastic as always. To everyone listening, thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Let's go, Lions. One Pride.
One Pride.
Recording stopped.